How are you doing, Arles Javier? How are you? Today we're starting a little late. How you doing, Josh? Dr. C Spots. That's a cool handle. I like it. Jay. Thank you, She's Josh. Thank you for the likes. Appreciate it. All right. So I see we have people slowly coming in. Kari, how are you? Dope. Thanks, She's Josh. Appreciate it, man. So to anybody who doesn't know, this channel is revolving around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation, and we talk all things simulation, computation, philosophy, and whatever else that we want to bring up as subjects. Hi, doing Julie, RR, user 185562, Laura, Megs. How are you, everybody? Sweet Uncle, Gary Castron. All right. Well, thank you for the likes, guys. If we can keep liking as much as we can so we can bring more people in, that would be amazing. Thank you. How are you to everybody on YouTube, to anybody who joins? And as I'm sure everybody knows, today is kind of a crazy day since Trump, somebody tried to kill Trump. Pivotal moment, it seems, in our simulation, huh? How you doing, MEF? On YouTube, Diana? How are you, everyone? Yeah, let's keep trying to keep bringing the likes up so we can go into the few thousands in the beginning so that we bring more people in and we discuss some of the crazy stuff that is happening. Welcome back to all the regulars and to all the new people, Josie, LIG, to all the new people that are here. This channel we mostly talk about simulation, the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. Right now, it looks like my hair is simulated, but it looks insane. That's not how I would simulate it. Fog and lasers. Fog and lasers is very appropriate since my channel actually revolves around my discovery that if you project laser 650 nanometer on the surface and you ingest a particular molecule, you would see code running in surfaces. So welcome, everybody. It's a great crowd today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So as everybody knows, today is a little crazy. Somebody tried to shoot Trump. I'm pretty sure that because Trump is one of the most polarizing characters in our history, probably, it's kind of hard to talk about it in terms of I think it's safe to say that in a democratic system, we don't want these things to happen, regardless to our political predispensation. And I'm not a political animal. I try not to touch political subjects too much because I think it's ultimately, if you ask me, it's a waste of time. I think ultimately that where it's at is being able to hold a conversation actually with people who disagree with you, but truly, and that I feel like politics actually is in the way of that, or at least the way politics is practiced today. It is a heavy day, to be honest. I don't feel like we've been in a moment like this in history for a while. On the one hand, I want to say I'm not surprised because I am seeing that whatever chapter we're on, we're reaching some kind of a crescendo of a sort. Hopefully, we have enough wisdom to step back from anything too crazy happening. Bruce Lee shirt, yes, sir. One of my favorite shirts. So anybody who's joining again, I'm going to reiterate it one more time for this round. This channel mostly discusses the simulation hypothesis. Only in my case, my name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. And we usually discuss this topic and things that are adjacent. So to all the newcomers, welcome. I think it was staged. Proof of the simulation, yes. The simple outline of it is that if you project a 650 nanometer diffracted laser, so just a red diffracted laser, and you ingest a particular molecule, you will see code running in surfaces across the board, everywhere. to the extent that we can, let's keep giving it likes just so we draw more crowd in the beginning. And how are you, Mandalove S Cake? Oh, Mandalove S Cake. Is that how you pronounce it? So that's that's the way that I'm suggesting that we can actually see it. There's obviously a much larger discussion, and I've been talking to leading scientists in the field. I should actually probably I'm gonna give myself that reminder right now. Somebody suggested to actually put it as a poster in the back. And I'm gonna do it right now, so that way I don't forget. Yeah, let's keep giving him some like. So, okay, so what do you guys feel? Obviously, this is Mandalov's cakes or cake. I love it. Welcome. How do you see the code from the laser? You have to ingest a particular molecule that I cannot say the name of it on a live stream, but it can also be arrived by a particular magic tea from South America and pizza toppings, what we call pizza toppings, but not just by itself. You have to project the laser on the surface. It has to be diffracted, and reliably, if you're in that state, you will see code running in the surface. Contrast? What do you mean by contrast? Mandalov's cake. How do you see the... no, it's not from the contrast. It actually reveals a particular content. It literally looks like code. Today, I wanted to discuss, obviously, current events in the context of what this means for our stage of the simulation. Now, to anybody who's joining, I'm aware that jumping from not knowing anything about it to me talking about the simulation as if it's a given might be a little bit hard to swallow. I get it. But as we progress, you can ask questions and I can clarify. For all the regulars, I want to voice that for quite some time, it was clear that something is brewing, and probably next year, some kind of a major event is supposed to happen. I'm not big on predictions or apocalypse, things like that. I think it seems that something is building up, like it's building up towards something. Only time will tell, obviously. But it seems that next year we're supposed to be upgraded to like World 2.0 or something like that. And it will probably come through some narrative that makes sense from our perspective as well. So it's not going to be something that doesn't make any sense to us. And KK29, how are you? How you doing, Chillaxed? Angela. Spiritual community says it's a timeline jump. Yeah, possible. Even though, from what I'm observing, the timeline jumps, they're happening every single second. So there's nothing really, they're literally happening every second. You're branching out constantly. What I would say is that there seems to be some kind of a major fork that, according to how we behave on a regular day-to-day, would determine largely what kind of space we get to embark on. It's almost, think of it as like many ships that are leaving the port, and at the moment they're still close enough that you can jump between ships, but eventually they're going to drift apart far away enough that you won't be able to jump ships anymore. And I feel like this is our time to pick what ship we want to be on, and it's determined by what kind of vibe we're appropriating in the world. How you doing, Patricia? How are you? Why do you think next year is a big change? It's a long story, and I'm not big on prophecies. All I can say is that I don't know. I'm kind of gathering that information as I go, and a lot of things make sense. A lot of things are pointing to this date, something in 2025. I don't know if it's the arising. I don't know what it's going to look like on our end. It might look like the arising of AGI. It might look like aliens land. It might look like some kind of a portal opens up. But again, the story would still make sense in the context of what we know. So in order for the mind to cope with reality has to make sense to the mind as well. And to the extent that we can let go of all concepts, it will be easier for us to digest the true meaning of what's going on. Light versus dark. You can call it that. You can say that. I love seeing you live. How are you, Muffin? Well, that's very encouraging. Thank you. Thank you for joining back. How do we know what ship is what? Matter versus dark matter? Actually, funny enough, so dark matter, we talked about it yesterday. I think dark matter is involved, but not in this way. So like I wouldn't call dark matter dark in the sense of, good and evil. 2025 or 2026. I feel like it's 2025, but I feel like it's a process that's going to start at 2025. It might last for about a decade, and by 2035 the world is going to be completely unrecognizable, something completely different. Hey Mary, how are you? So I don't mind bringing you on, but what I'm asking people always to do is to put the topic that you want to talk about on the bottom. And if the topic matches and it sounds like we're vibing with what we're talking about right now, then I'll bring you on with pleasure. 650 nanometer is red. That is correct. Fog and lasers. Thank you. What is your channel about? Interesting. The thing is that nothing is shocking anymore. Yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? Are you aware of the Yuga cycles? Yes, I am. Thank you for bringing it out. Dolamo, how are you? So yeah, so where do we start here? As everybody knows, Trump was there was an attempt at assassinating Trump, and immediately people are obviously jumping on all kinds of bandwagons. I'm going to answer the question about the ship. How do we know what ship we're on through this little entry point to the conversation? People immediately jump on all kinds of bandwagons, right? It was staged. It was, Democrats wanted to kill him, whatever it is, right? So the staged part, I can very safely assume that it's highly improbable. I'll tell you why, because if you ever shot a weapon of any kind, you would know that even if you're the biggest expert in the world, the margin of error is so high. It's one gust of wind and it goes the wrong way, right? Considering how close it hit, I don't think Trump would ever take that risk, especially because it definitely, whatever you believe about Trump, whether you like him or you don't like him, I think you would agree that he has extreme narcissistic tendencies. So I don't think that's a secret, no matter if you like him or not. So I don't think a narcissist would ever risk his life for something like this, unless you want to say that what happened there is that they kind of made like a Hollywood, some kind of an implant that released some kind of a liquid that looks like blood. Okay, that's maybe possible. Wouldn't rule it out outside of the possibility at this point. Like the chat just said, nothing is really surprising anymore. Yeah, very unlikely to be staged too close to death. Exactly. That's my point. Everyone goes straight to their prescribed roles. Yeah, isn't it funny? This is a great practice, actually. This is a great point, Patricia. Thank you for that. Because whenever I catch myself, none of us are immune to being the product of the momentum of all of our convictions so far. So I think that, by the way, if you guys don't mind, while I'm talking, this round, I'm actually trying to bring more people in the beginning. So to the extent that you guys can, if we can tap to bring more likes, so more people join, we have a larger discussion. Thank you, everybody. So to the extent that, because I'm aware that this is just a natural human phenomena, where we are just a product of whatever in fact is happening to us, whatever we're convinced of already, and I'm the same way. Nobody's outside of the system. Whenever a big event happens and I have a strong emotional reaction, the first thing I do when I managed, I don't always manage, obviously, but this is a tendency that I've put myself, like I've learned to do this a few years ago, and since then I've always been doing this. Either it's in my personal life or in the more public life. Whenever there's something that triggers me, I always try to step back for a second, just in that moment, and not allow myself to be carried away with any conviction I have. Because obviously I have them just like everybody else, right? Immediately my brain starts making patterns like, this means this or that. And I try to just watch what happens in front of me. And then I want to see which one has the strongest pull on me. Now, it's possible that conviction, whatever it is, can still be even correct or closer to the truth than others. But I would like to optimize my own system in a way that I'm not as tethered to any one of my convictions, so I can actually pivot quickly. It, for many reasons. First of all, it's a healthier way to be because it's easier to have an interaction in the world, but also because I see that moving forward, whatever it is that is unfolding, either it's 2025 and I'm right on the money or a little later, I think it's clear that what Ray Kurzweil called the singularity, that's coming. And I think we're already in it. We're kind of like going into the event horizon now. To anybody who doesn't know, I doubt that somebody doesn't know this on the internet at this point, but Ray Kurzweil's idea of the singularity is the rate of change of information that is so fast that makes it impossible to predict what's going to happen next. So David Deutsch makes a really interesting distinction between prediction and prophecy. The difference is there's a certain amount of evidence and data you can use to make coherent predictions. But beyond that point, beyond that horizon, it becomes a prophecy because you simply, by definition, can never inspect that far. And the better your technological ability and your knowledge creating framework, the further your horizon of actual prediction is, and that way, so basically the horizon that separates between prediction and a prophecy grows. The whole idea of the singularity is that the amount of informational change becomes so rapid that you literally, by definition, cannot predict anything that's going to happen tomorrow, no matter how much data you have. That's the definition of it. And then eventually the next, hour, and then the next minute, and so on and so on, and it keeps spiraling in. And I think we're already in a form of something like that. And because of that, if you think about it, the only real ability or even currency that you would have, the only thing that makes you valuable, is how capable you are maintaining your presence and your center in the face of such rapid change. And because of that, I started practicing. So I highly recommend for people to do this on a regular basis. I would love to hear more about your experience behind the curtain and your theories about what you can be done to figure out what it's all about. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and facilitating this. I appreciate that. Thank you, Rhett McBride. Thank you. I will definitely share some more. And so in the context of what happened today, I've lived through an assassination in my life, and I know that people, boomers lived through Kennedy's assassination. I think that whenever something like this happens, well, this wasn't a full assassination, and even an attempt of assassination, it really says something about how far we're skewed in our ability to communicate with one another. Because I wish I could say that this is surprising. I'm pretty sure that everybody can agree that this is not surprising because of the amount of tension that has built up in the political system. And because I'm not, like I said, I don't usually drift into political conversations, I want to try and frame this more in terms of universal terms. Because I think that ultimately, if we want to deal with universal scale, which I believe this is where humanity should look for, because people say Earth is our home. Earth is our room. The universe is our home. And it's just a matter of how expansive we're thinking. The fact that we can produce artifacts that can go to space, and the fact that we're capable of doing that, tells you that we have certain capabilities that are there for a reason. Or even if you don't believe in any teleological argument, in other words, that there's some kind of a light in the end of the tunnel that is waiting for us, even in terms of the fact that the function of humanity is possible in existence in the universe, tells you that it will manifest itself. And I always say, I can't imagine a more beautiful world in which we combine the beauty of the people who love toiling the land, so to speak, and bringing planets to a more and more beautiful state, and the people who go and explore and find new frontiers. And that can never be achieved under the current political regime. And maybe regime is the wrong word, but maybe under the political tension. I think we're in a point of history in which this is our chance to show the universe we've learned the lesson, that we can actually do this, and in the moment of the highest tension, we'll all of a sudden open our hearts and actually listen to what in fact is going on, and manage to massage the situation in a way that will calm everything down and slowly build something from all this manure, and build something new, instead of having this explosion. I think that the way that I see it working is that either you believe it's a simulation or some spiritual environment or just an empty universe. In all three cases, what I'm about to say next will be the same, which is that the test is, what do you do in the face of the same situation again and again? If you have to hit a wall in order to know that there's a wall there, you're no different than a Roomba, right? The whole point of intelligence is being able to predict the next situation and formulate a vision, a map that helps, it guides you with more and more grace through the environment you find yourself in, and also a better ability to map the space. I think we reached the stage, people always say history always repeats itself, it goes in circles. I don't think it goes in circles. I think it's a spiral. So a similar scenario happens because it's like a season, but we're still advancing in our understanding. And I really believe that we reached a stage, even though it's maybe difficult to see at the moment, in which we can see a higher ability, a higher function from this situation. So even though we've been here before, humanity has been here before, we are capable of finding a new solution. And I think one of these solutions is to not immediately, on a personal level, is to train ourselves not to immediately say the knee-jerk reaction that we have. It was staged, it was this, it was that, it was this. It's always too early to say, and basically 99.99999% of the time, almost 100, we're wrong about what we thought it was. Not just in human affairs, but in general. And I think this humility will get us pretty far. Is pausing, okay, let's just let the thing happen, let all the craziness of media tell you all kinds of things, and see if you can not attach yourself to any one of these scenarios and just live with, I don't know. I'm okay with not knowing for now. I'm going to wait for more information to actually make a decision. And I think that's a healthier way to be in general. And if we are to try and embark into this ultimate journey for humanity into space, into the galaxy and beyond, one thing we obviously have to square, which is that we cannot afford to always hit a wall before knowing a wall is there. I think one of the tests is, can we see the wall beforehand, stop, and navigate around it? And the wall now is our inability to accept the fact that some people just don't see the world in the same way. That's okay. But it seems like it got to a point where it's so inconceivable for people that they're willing to throw everything away, including democracy, which is really the bedrock of everything that makes you feel secure. To all the people, doesn't matter if it's left or right, that want to just burn the system. I would even go as far as to say is that maybe some of the anger is understandable. But I think the failure is to realize that the reason that you can afford to even have the thought of fighting the system is already proof for you that you're in a much better place with much more comfort from which you can formulate that thought. If you are in a complete emergency mode, you can't even formulate the most basic thoughts about the next course of action, let alone organize and all that stuff. So I think that we got so enamored by this idea that we are the disease that we actually became one. And I think it's time for us to reframe a little bit and maybe look at ourselves for the totality of what we are and what we can be, which is not a disease, but a certain kind of function that is very powerful, and understand that that gives us a lot of privileges, and that's okay. But with these privileges also comes responsibility. And I think that is the birth of a mature civilization. Let's see if we have any comments, because I went on for quite some time. Do you have... I already saw someone selling T-shirts from the big moment today. Why is this so funny? Hey, listen, this is capitalism at its best, right? I appreciate a reminder to step back. I appreciate you appreciating it. Thank you, Patricia. A moment to observe the pendulum at play in all of this. Yeah. So what if it was like a die packet? Yeah, we went through that. Go straight to their described roles. Okay, now we caught up. A moment to observe a pendulum. Appreciate the reminder. Let's see. Thanks for all the follows. There's different singularity frameworks as well. Yeah. So the definition according to Kurzweil is the inability to predict anything in the future, but frameworks are obviously part of it. I already saw someone. Okay. Do you have plans for controlled trials, experiments with the laser discovery? Thank you for the question. I do have plans, and we're constantly running tests, but these tests are not like an official scientific, double blind. That is in the works in the sense that I'm speaking with the people who are capable of doing these tests, that have, they're running the experiments. But like I've said in the chat before, when you have a protocol and you got funding for any project, you can't really steer away from that protocol. So it will take some time to actually reframe the protocol, submit to make sure that the people who invest in the facility are okay with that. You need to get a special approval from the government because of the classified substance and everything. So reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. That is such a good quote. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Thank you for that, Patricia. Let's see. Be neutral at first. Give yourself time to let the world event unfold, and it will reveal itself. Yeah. And this is something that, it's kind of mind blowing to me that, well, maybe not mind blowing. I think the lack of the village elder in the world at the moment, either it's because they're just lacking, or because the younger generation just doesn't listen. Whatever the reason is, one of the biggest wisdoms that you learn only when you live through a certain period of time is that almost nothing that you thought that isn't. And that's like a hard lesson that it takes a while to learn. And that's not, it sounds like maybe a slightly virtue signaling statement. And I'm sure that there are cases in which that is the case, but that is truly one of the deepest wisdoms. I think that the statement to the other extreme, which is, at the end of your life, you realize you know nothing, is also a virtue signaling statement. It is not true. Of course, you know something. Even if it's a tiny drop of everything, you know something. And it's important to admit that. But I do think that realizing that things are not that simple and clear cut helps you to be less explosive towards anything that is not what you're thinking at the moment. I don't have to name examples for everybody to know that there's so many events in the world now that people are just like literally, losing family members over. Whatever side of conviction you fall on, please know that there's always some carnal, like some seed of convicted truth on the other side. It doesn't mean that the truth is always in the middle, but it does mean that unless you consider the fact that the other human is appropriating some kind of a function that makes sense to them, if you don't try and understand that function, you can never, ever get to a point where you come to some kind of a resolution. This kind of path in which you fail to understand that the other side must have some kind of a conviction that makes sense to them, is bounded. It's bound to hit a wall. That's one of these Roomba situations. The only way to steer away from the wall is to understand that the other human has some kind of a conviction that even if you understand it and you don't agree with it, you first have to understand that you know what it actually is. And most things, especially chaotic things, never become clear in the moment. You can never know. And this new layer of humans that seem to think that whatever should be known now, versus when the smoke clears, only then you can kind of really know what things are. I think that is extremely corrosive. Hey Lisa, how are you? Be neutral at first. Give yourself a let world event. Oh, I saw this. Yes, thank you. Hindsight. Hindsight. Let's see what else. quick recap of current topic, please. So, two things. This channel mostly talks about the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I claim to have found proof that we live in a simulation. And these conversations usually are around these subjects. But at the moment, we're talking about that in the context of what happened today with Trump, and how all of that stuff is a reflection of a much deeper human condition. Do you think there's a measurement tool that we could invent to map the world that the laser reveals? Absolutely. Whatever is true of the laser is true, which means that even though we don't know what to look for and where exactly at the moment, eventually we'll understand, there's a continuum here, and we can build a device that utilizes that continuum. It might be a continuum along a function of the brain. So like it might be a continuum of, like we're always looking in the three-dimensional spatial coordinates because we can't really move in time at the moment. But essentially everything that happens for us, we believe, is in the four-dimensional coordinates of time and three dimensions of space. But if the mind is an actual coordinate space, then we will start looking, okay, where in the mind it actually is. Like if the mind is an actual space. And my intuition is that it's going to be something like that, where there's going to be a device that basically allows the brain to drift more in this or other directions in the mind, and will reliably start seeing things. So it's almost like, if you peek out from a submarine or something, and then you look to the sides, if you couldn't imagine a third dimension, you don't know what this means. But if you would know what the third dimension is, this reveals completely new content that you've never seen before. And in the same way, there might be directions in the mind space that you can look and see new things that you could never see before. And eventually, if we understand what this continuum is, we'll be able to build some kind of a device, I believe, and be able to see this even without the substances, probably. Filters and stages, the levels, layers of how we perceive. Yep, that's essentially what I'm saying. Laser, I am never lost. The method that I've discovered is that if you ingest a particular molecule and you project a diffracted laser on the surface, you will see code running in surfaces. And this is replicable 100% of the time. It does take people different amounts of time to see the actual code, but eventually everybody sees it. Interesting topics. So the Maya, but in the simulation context. Essentially, yeah. Thank you for that, Marcus. I like this way of thinking about it. How you doing, Antinark? How are you, brother? I see the simulation as a neurological phenomena, so the matrix is within our mind. Sure. I think we had this discussion also live, but I do believe that there's also an external environment that contains other forms of mind, or ultimately it is all one mind, of course. But it is worth talking about the differences of these minds. The difference between them actually makes a difference. The mind as a space, yeah. Experience of life is phenomenal and not explained in neuroscience yet. That is true. I have seen the code. Oh, that's amazing. I am never lost. You mean if you saw it without the laser and without substances? Yeah, I've get this mail a lot. I'm not sure it's exactly the same code because there's differences in which I'm deciphering, but please share. I'm always open. Did your old account get shut down? Which account, Patricia? Oh, you're talking about Antinark. Yeah, Antinark was saying yesterday that he shut it down because there was a bunch of trolls. And I really enjoy our interaction, brother. It's wonderful. Sober. How did you experience your current realization? In short, what led you to this current stage for us? For your, okay. Well, the short version of that, Marcus, is that I aim towards it. I kind of try and figure it out for years. And eventually I managed to land on this idea that the laser should do something, and it revealed the code. A lot of my videos are describing the details of that. And I encourage you to go watch them. You can watch the full versions on Dango Thoughts on YouTube, or even the videos that are pinned on top on TikTok. You would see a little bit more of the details, but they're not going to be the full version. And the full version you can watch on YouTube. I deleted it as it was trolled. Yeah, Antinark, you have great ideas and content and flow, so I'm very happy about you restarting a new channel. How have you ruled out that the code isn't part of the laser itself? Simple. You move the laser, and the code is not moving with the laser, but remains on its own side. And then when you move it, it actually is literally like you're revealing something with a flashlight. So it has its own movement on its own side with its own coordinates. But then when you project the laser on it, it just stays with its own behavior, and it's not moving with your head. It's not moving with the laser, and it's extremely complex. It exhibits extremely complex behavior in space that is insistent on being what it is. So it exhibits what cognitive scientists call objectness, a rigidity of existence, so to speak. And yeah, so that's the short version of that. In fact, it looks almost exactly like you would look through a microscope, where clearly you're looking at something that exists. It's just that when you move the lens, you can see more and more of it, and you're kind of moving across that world. How have you ruled out? Okay. What? It's jumping on me. Yeah, I will, but rarely do I get to have a conversation. Usually it's one-way traffic. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. Usually it's a one-way traffic. Revealing something with a flashlight is mind-blowing. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. So covers nurse. Wait, black. So she was covert narcissist that was obsessed. Okay, this is some internal politics. I don't know anything enough about what's going on there. Candace proved this theory 3 days ago. Candace? Who is Candace? Chris P. Bacon. Who's Candace? Okay, let's see what we have on YouTube. I think your micro analogy about the moment you realize your parents don't have all the answers is macro explanation of many of life's discoveries. So is there a code wherever you point the laser? Yeah, the code is the question was if the code is everywhere where you point the laser. Yeah, it's literally in every possible surface. It's if you point it on yourself, and it's very clear that it's just in every point in space. It's just that you need a surface to bounce it off of in order to see the code. But if you could bounce it off the molecules of the air somehow and come back to your eye reliably, then you would see it also in 3 dimensions. Just don't shine it in the mirror. Yeah. Well, actually, if you use a few mirrors, there's a way to actually allow it to create some kind of an image if you exactly calculate how the light is going to be bouncing from one another. But that's a very complicated process. We talked about it the other day. So in the context of what happened, Antinarch, today we were talking about in the context of what happened with Trump, right? And this is just one more event that tells me that we definitely need to immediately correct course in our discourse and the way that we're talking to each other. Like for example, in this chat, and I ask everybody to not create. This is the opposite of trying to get people at each other's throats, and this is going to be a good practice. If you're willing, if you can say if you for Trump, against Trump, just so we can see if there's actually a diversity of opinion here. But I'm not interested in the discussion of who's right. That doesn't matter to me right now. I just want to see if there's an actual division here, or most people lean on one end. He goes, the reason I'm asking is because if we can have a conversation here in a small, forum, it's possible, I believe, to expand this kind of ability to a larger narrative. I'm a Democrat. Does that mean that automatically? So, like, the fact that you're saying that you're a Democrat, Melissa, just so I understand clearly, what you mean is that you're against Trump. Is what you're saying? I'd rather support Biden as his public image is representative of good. Okay, acceptable, more so than Trump, which reflects on society, changes it. I understand that. The solution with both sides. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. Trump. To the people that are, please if you're willing, you don't have to obviously, but keep bringing the answers in because this is helpful for me also to know. So we have Trump. It's about 50-50 right now. Variety. Amazing. No, everything. So everything is made of code, which makes sense given man's technical evolution. Yeah. It also makes sense in other ways, but I think it's more complex than that. Wavelength then reveals the code. What do you think it is about the? I think it bounces off MEF to your question. What I think that reveals the code. I think it's literally bouncing off the code and gets back to your eye. So while you guys throwing in your answers, so I'm also kind of like somewhere in the kind of disillusioned with both sides. And this is a question to all the people that are decisively on one side or the other. Um, would you guys say that this is still a disappointing choice, or are you like, like a big fan of whatever side you're supporting? Would it be fair to even the people that are decisive? Would the statement, if I say right now, I think that from all the brilliant minds in America, we could do better from these two options, would this ring true to you? I wish there was no politics. Yeah, man. I think you're not alone. How are you, Aaron? How are you, brother? Um, This is why I was saying this. I think I'm with you, blah blah. Just popular vote app using blockchain or something like that. I'm with you. And even like a more advanced system where you have like a, something like a more advanced version of Neuralink that kind of measures your vibe and actual like conviction or feeling, and then the vote is being taken by literally the world's mood at any given moment, because like most kind of like neurons, like we are the neurons. So like each thing that we feel is like the action potential, and then enough of us over here, if we feel this thing, then all of a sudden this decision is being made regionally for us because that's what we want. This would be kind of like, the true democratic system. I feel Biden is good as a good president, and I'm happy with him. He is too old, but there you go. Yeah, but the question is, see, this is, and I'm not, to be very clear to anybody who just joined, this is not a political discussion. I know it's hard to believe according to the messages right now, but this is not a political discussion. What we're trying to distill is whether we can have a disagreement about the candidate and still agree on something. Can we most of us agree that we could do better than these two people, even if you're convinced that one of them at the moment is your favorite? Representatives of progress as people. Have any of you seen the evil stuff that Biden did? So Eric, again, this is just to give you. I don't know if you just joined, but this conversation is it's very important for me that we don't go down the path of like voicing our opinion beyond the point of like who is your candidate at the moment, because I'm not trying to have a political discussion. What I'm trying to see is if we can actually agree on something about the system as a whole. Clearly, we're not in good shape in general. It's the hierarchy or ego that will collapse inevitably, and it's obvious that group thinking. Many people can find middle ground. Seems like most won't at this point in society. Do you feel that it's most? How are you, Keltalk? Do you feel that it's most, or do you feel that most people that are very vocal on social media can't? Which I don't think it's most people. Eric is likely a bot. I feel like they are just figureheads, so I'm not sure how much it matters which one wins. I don't think it's most people. Eric knows the truth. Kari yeah, I don't, I can't say that it doesn't make sense. That there's more like some kind of a more incentivized arm that is deeper, that is kind of guiding the actual trajectory of what's going on. I know it sounds like a conspiratorial thinking, but it makes sense. It makes some sense to me at this point in the game. I mean, so many things are just so crazy. Trump. This is on YouTube. We have 3 Trumps. I think our government is broken, and he seems to give us a better chance to sort out our community and hopefully get both sides talking about how to fix things together. Red McBride, would you think that anybody on the, if you could wave a magic wand, and I know thinking of politics in terms of like hypotheticals is not a good strategy, but just about your opinion, like your vibe, if you could have a candidate that is more somebody else than Trump, do you think there can be a better choice in general from the entirety of the United States? Like, if would you prefer Trump or let's say Ramaswamy? I agree we could be better on both ends. Yeah, I agree with that. to me is the lesser of two evils. See, it's always kind of like the choice, just because that's the best we feel, that's the best we can do. Antinarch says, fear is the enemy of awareness, and our knowledge of psychology is drinking mercury. The truth will set you free. I agree with that. Magic wand, ranked choice, voting, more parties. True. Trump all the way. We don't appreciate the way knowledge progresses through time, so openly advanced. What fascinates me is if 80% of people are NPCs, then life on Earth ultimately gain leadership. You mean NPCs in the sense that they don't really understand, or like actual NPCs who have no consciousness? That's to blah blah. I think so let's give it a little bit more like, just so we can get more people in. I think we're dropping just a little bit. I really think that if we are to move through this period without it exploding or hitting a wall, so to speak, I think it's through the attempt to actually have a compassionate conversation, no matter how angry the other side is. Now, obviously, you can't do that if it starts drifting into violence, but I think we still have an ability to just drop the finger, the blaming finger. Because, so this is where I'm probably going to get in trouble with some of you here. In fact, it's guaranteed. But I'll give you like one example that to me, it's so clear that it's like a big misunderstanding, right? So my conviction is that all ills of society, in between people at least, is due to the generalization the brain makes about the full scope of what we believe about that particular thing, right? I'll tell you what I mean in a moment, so you don't. I'm just approaching it with some what's the word I'm looking for? With some caution. So when people talk about, for example, either racial discrimination or gender discrimination, really, honestly, any discrimination, because whatever discrimination you believe is happening will be perceived by the person who believes it through the fear, and therefore the victim, like, well, clearly something is being done that is wrong to somebody else, right? Even if you don't believe yourself to being a victim, you think that either group or type of person is going through some kind of a victim situation. If you really place yourself there, like in the moment of not what the news are telling you, but like if you place yourself in all the scenarios that you believe are happening in these situations, you'll see that it's always what is being taken into account by individuals is the full gestalt of what it is, right? So, for example, if I actually grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood, okay, and because of that, you develop a certain type of awareness to human behavior, because certain behaviors can signal very easily that there might be trouble. Okay. In America, it's a very common thing. And then, by the way, I'm just using this as an example. It applies to all discriminations, to all of them. And I have a deeper point here, so don't think that I'm just like going on this tangent for no reason. In America, it's very often it's perceived through the lens of race, right? Like, well, if it's a black guy walking down the street, then all of a sudden people like are more scared or something like that, right? But if you place yourself there, the actual ingredient that is making somebody make a decision about crossing the streets or something like that, it's all about micro expressions and behavior. It's how they're walking. It's because I submit to you that the color of their skin plays a much smaller role than how they're walking, right? Or how they're behaving. If it's a white kid and it's like kind of the dark and they're kind of like walking funny, like walking with somebody who's, there's a certain behavior that is attached to a certain kind of particular possible outcome, right? As uncomfortable as it makes us, that is true. So there's certain types of behaviors that when they're appropriated often enough, they give you a hint at what might happen next. So it's so clear to me that that's the main operative in literally all the situations, right? Of course, 100%, you have a subset of society that are just, what are you going to do, right? They're just like, they see somebody who doesn't look like them, just full on xenophobia. Hey, I immediately don't like them. It's what it is, right? It still exists, 100%. But I would submit that the whopping majority of all the kind of like, discriminations we make are a product of our brain making this very large consolidation of what we think is plausible with this particular thing. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because the remedy to this can never be forcing people to, no, you should never have this kind of conviction about this kind of person, because it essentially is going against what the brain is doing naturally. We are trying to avoid danger, right? That's what the brain does naturally. So if we have a certain conviction about a particular kind of behavior, then we will always have it. So now if you introduce a competing idea that is just an idea, but, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, well, now you're creating a false impression about what the situation is. But you didn't solve the problem. The only way to solve the problem is to actually allow ourselves to teach ourselves how to be more attuned to what is happening here. Because the more we do that, the less we think in broad strokes and general convictions and lines. And it actually is the antidote to having these very, kind of like surface level judgments of different people. Now, by the way, this is, I'm speaking here, I use this as one example, but literally it exists in every possible domain. The whole meme of like, you ask women if they prefer to be in a forest with like a man or a bear, all that stuff, right? Or, I don't know. Again, you pick your flavor. It's like all over the place, right? So now this stuff is like in the political domain. This is like just on steroids now, right? This is like the ultimate version of that, where if you don't like Trump, whatever he says, out the window, I don't care, right? And vice versa with Biden, which is like, he's just too old. That's it, right? The hardest thing, and this is why I understand it to some degree, is to actually address every single moment as a new moment with a new potential to be different. It's difficult because it forces us to make a new calculation about what this might be all over again, all the time. And we can't live in that state constantly, but if I actually think it's not that hard to do, and in fact, it becomes a fun game, because it's almost like you're a puzzle solver in any given moment. And actually being the person that doesn't jump on their own bandwagon in that moment and saying, oh, I know what this is. If you resist that dopamine spike of like, oh, I know, but you actually allow yourself to just observe for a second longer, you'll see that there's a much higher prize, because you'll get to see how both sides are, how the sausage is made, and how both sides are saying the same memes over and over and over and over again. It's like a cycle. And then there's something that is caused in the middle. There's this tension. And if you give yourself enough of a time to not be part of the sausage, but just to look, you'll see that it's literally an illusion. The truth of what in fact is going on is so complex in any given moment. It truly is. And it's actually a much more satisfying state where you get to watch that when it really is. Now, ultimately, the version of that, I would say, is, it's kind of like everything that we understand from spiritual pursuits, the dissolution of the ego, where you drop your frame altogether, and all there is just what in fact is unfolding. Sure, but even before you get to like all these like crazy levels, it is so easy to just allow yourself for just a second to train yourself to step back and watch it, and you'll be amazed how much you'll discover. In fact, I will even give you another little trick. I edit a lot. So like I actually did quite a bit of a professional editing work. And what I've noticed is that when you have footage of people, if it's like real life situations, there's a certain cadence to social interaction. So if I'm talking to you in person, there's a certain rhythm to how we're used to in our society to behave. and therefore there's an acceptable time of looking at each other. So let's, I don't know, it's like 4 seconds or something, right? In which we go like, how are you? Good. Oh, good. Whatever it is, right? And then after 4 seconds, this rhythm that we don't even know we agreed to dictates that now we take our eyes off. So like either we look over there, we find something else to look at for a second as if it wasn't related, but it's all related. It's all part of that rhythm. So like part of that rhythm was we said hello, we break. We say the next line, we break. We do the next thing, we break. And we constantly do this, right? I realized that the reason we break like that is because we're constantly wearing masks, right? So we all know this. Like obviously, most of the day, depending on the situation, we put like even if we don't feel. I don't mean mask in the negative sense of lying, but like if you feel like shit, you don't want to bring it to work, so you put a better face, or you actually you try and like bring yourself up and have a slightly different tone than what you're actually feeling. So that's the mask, right? And by the way, like Tony Robbins always say, emotion creates emotion, and that is so true. Because if you do this with your face or you bring your shoulders back, that actually works. It actually changes your mood. But that aside, because of this rhythm of putting masks and putting them off, because it's energy. Like putting the mask on is energy. So it's almost like we agreed, our subconsciousness agreed to drop the mask every few seconds, so we don't get completely exhausted within like a very short interaction. That's, by the way, I believe why we get exhausted being around people for too long, because especially introverted people, because they're not as good or not as interested in putting this mask on. Now, by the way, it is not to say like introverted people are better than extroverted people. Not at all. They have a completely different system of how they actually get energy and all that stuff. I'm leaving them aside. It's just that we have this rhythm. So now what I've noticed editing people is that if you stay a second longer than what feels natural, what is accepted by society, in other words, what feels natural to you to do, right? So you like said something and then you just stay on the person for a second longer, you will see that person, they either looked away or did something, and they will drop their mask. You will see who they really are. Like that. Try it. It's crazy. Like it's almost 100% of the time it happens. And many times it will save you a decade of knowing somebody, because whomever that was in that moment, that's the real person. And by the way, I don't mean that like in that person all of a sudden they become some kind of like a crazy animal, right? No, it's like, but there are things there underneath that you might still like, but you want to know what they are. And that's a really neat trick. So that the fact that this is happening all the time, it tells you that things are never, ever, ever that clear cut. People acted out of the conviction that made the most sense to them in that moment. And knowing that, I believe, allows for a little bit more compassion. I watch certain things on the news or whatever, and I go like, dude, what? Like, literally feels like a glitch in the matrix. You're like, what is that? Like, how is that possible? How is it possible? Certain things, right? And I'm sure everybody here have their flavor of this feeling. But then I go, okay, but if I want to be charitable, I know that somehow this person arrived at thinking this. And obviously, I can then go through my checklist of like, look, I think they're playing the narcissistic game. They're just virtue signaling. They're just doing this, just doing that. Ultimately, what it is, and I actually think it connects ultimately deeply into what NT Narc is always saying, which is that ultimately, and this it's going to sound so kumbaya, but it's true. Ultimately, it dials down to we all want to be loved. We all want to feel like whatever we're putting out there is valuable and we're accepted. That's the kind of like the approval, right? And ultimately, it's kind of like by the parents, but then ultimately, it's but just like feeling like you belong to the world. So if you can actually induce this state that you already belong in the world, that you already are there, and you feel that, whatever you do is you are trying your best and you're doing your best, the need for the approval from the other side actually drops quite a bit. And then the need to hold the mask on drops quite a bit. And it's actually much less exhausting because you get to just be exactly what you are without feeling the need like you constantly like you might forget something, you have to say this to this person, or you have to behave this way in this environment. And I think that this little ability, if we practice it more, it is the only thing that can save humanity from an inevitable outcome of complete collision constantly throughout history, because we are, like Antinarch said, are acting out of this fear that we're not going to be enough, that we're not going to be accepted, that we're not going to be loved. And I think that this is a uniquely wonderful moment for all of us to be able to. This is a moment where, like, look how many people here on the chat, right, disagree about, Trump, Biden, whatever. See if you can watch your own conviction, especially if it's strong. If it's strong, wonderful. That's actually even better, because then it's like a very heavy weight that you can feel. Look how much conviction and thrust there is behind you. Like, no, but come on, like if you drop your bullshit, you'll see that this is the right position. Will you? If that's what your narrative is telling you, look again. This is the machinery. That's the sausage. That's how it's being made. This conviction that if people could just stop being stupid, they would see it my way. That is the illusion, the delusion that there's some kind of a, ultimate way of observing it. Which, again, I am actually saying that there is like ultimate, like fundamental reality, but that's a deeper layer. That's not here. Here we have a conviction about what we're doing in human affairs. So if we can just allow ourselves to be the one that is dropping that machinery, you can still say what you say. You can still claim logical things about your position and everything that you believe that should happen for the country, politically, whatever it is. But if you can have less of a thrust, less of a attachment to this drive that you have towards, like, oh, let's find all the people that are wrong and let's collide with them. Because it might feel the easiest way right now, and even the most justified, this kind of like this justified feeling. I'm justified doing this. That is the thing that leads us to all the walls every single time in history. And I think that it's time in our spiral to actually step out of that and go, like, not hit that wall. Thank you for enjoying these streams, Kairos. Let's see some of the comments. Interesting what Danny is saying. Thank you, blah, blah. This eye contact dance is such trippy things to think about. Oh, it's wild. Like, if the second you start doing that, you'll be blown away. I'm telling you, it's almost always da 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 da, drop the gaze. And it's so flowy. Like, your mind just doing that. You you would look away, you would look at your phone. There's always an excuse to look away, but the impulse to look away came before. It's not like something grabbed your attention. Is that your mind wanted to disengage, and then it found something to pay attention to that to basically make sense of that. Tenny's vibe is so great. I find it synchronistic that you discovered the laser thing. Oh, thanks, blah blah. That's so kind. I'm going to try this freaking cool experiment. Oh yeah, it is. You catch the micro expressions. Exactly. So now, by the way, this is what I mean. Divide and multiply. The self-righteous. Yeah. Self-righteous Roomba. Oh my God, this is amazing. Okay, the self-righteous Roomba, I'm adopting it. Thank you, Patricia. I'm gonna give you credit for this. This is awesome. This is brilliant. Self-righteous Roomba. I wanted Vivek. He's young, smart, and he would be better bringing people together. However, the religious right is such a big part of the Republican base. Unfortunately, he didn't have much of a chance in 24. You got a very good grasp of the situation in America right now. The us against them tribalism is just keeping people from talking and finding middle ground that can benefit the stronger society. We break, yes, that's the mask. At the moment, my son is listening to music and vibing. I'm listening to you, and we're just enjoying each other's company. That's beautiful. With strangers, very different. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I really love Self-Righteous Boomba. What do I want to say? I forget. So, I forgot what I wanted to say. But I think that for me, the fact that we get to have this moment is just truly incredible. Like, I know it looks grim in a lot of ways, but I really believe that this is one of these moments where the night is darkest before dawn. I really believe that. Um, Everyone comes at it from their own perspective. Can one person be right, or it can all be right? Yeah, I am by no means saying that the truth is always in the middle. I do think that there's a truth to the matter, right? If you're walking down the street and you see two people fighting in the alley, it's not nowhere written that one of them is not like just defending themselves and the other one is trying to attack them, which is not the same thing, right? But ultimately, when you break them, and if the person who is being attacked just keep coming back, okay, now they're a problem. Like there has to be a line where it just breaks, right? And we kind of understand, we kind of shake off, just like animals do, and we move on. That we have to get better and better at that. How much have you interacted with console? Can you describe the console again? Yeah, it's every time I smoke, and the console just appears like a computer console that appears for me, and it's just there. I will describe it in a moment, but I do want to. I just remembered I wanted to tie down this point. So to the extent that, like I said, there's no way that on social media, speaking the kind of stuff that I just said, you're not going to get in trouble with someone. Of course, it's always the case. But to the extent that you can, reach and maybe like lend an ear instead of just reacting. So I would challenge you to think of all the situations, and really, it doesn't matter what they are. Either your trigger is police brutality, if if your BLM is your vibe, or women's rights, or gay rights, or trans, all that stuff, right? All of it, whatever your flavor is. Project yourself back to the situation that you were convinced it was discrimination, and ask yourself whether it was possible that actually what was operative there was the behavior and the micro expressions on the face, which is very strong, by the way. When somebody walks in a room and people say, "Oh, they have a vibe," now I'm even open to the possibility that maybe we actually do emanate some kind of an energetic field. I'm open to that. But I think before that, our psychology, our subconscious is very good at picking up micro expressions. And if somebody has some kind of an ill intent, or they're already riding some kind of a, like they're there to, like, start something, right? Which very often is the case. Like even where the victim was like on the surface it looked like but there was something, maybe they're not even aware of it, was instigated literally by micro expressions, because they already believe they're a victim. So they're already on their face, everything is written on your face, right? So does this mean that we should never try and remedy certain what would be the word, broken protocols and certain systems? Of course not. 100% we should always, always, always drill down to the most fundamental thing where we have the ability to remedy this, right? In especially in when it comes to the power of the government and things like that. 100%. But to take responsibility for the fact that if you are appropriating yourself a certain way in the world, even if you think it's invisible, we also have to take responsibility for that. Always ask, what did I do that could have brought this about, right? And it can be that nothing. That sometimes people are just crazy, right? But I would say that most people are not. And they're just reacting in the same way that you would react if you would be in their shoes. And understanding that part, I think, is super important. I have that T-shirt. It's my favorite T-shirt. Yeah, I love this design. You know that actually a friend of mine designed this. I feel like I'm name dropping here, but like I just love the story that she designed this like a long time ago. I think it's like a decade ago, and then they had to get special permission from his daughter, because that's he's basically a trademark. So that I think Robert Downey Jr. was involved because he knew his daughter and something. I don't know, but basically they had to get his permission to do this logo. And then they put it out, and it was on a bunch of things, and it kind of went viral for a little bit, and then it kind of died out and disappeared. And I remember she gave me like 3 shirts before. I was very proud before anybody had them. And then I had it ever since. And look, this shirt is like, I don't know how old it is, but I always keep it like in a really good condition because I love it. Yeah, they sold it everywhere. It was on phones, on everything. Yeah. Her work is amazing. Okay, let's see a couple more comments. About the console, to all the newcomers, I also claim that I have, well, I'm just telling you, I don't know. I think the word claim is a little bit too heavy. I'm just telling you that I also experience on the molecule what I call the console. I met a few other people that experienced something similar. And there's a guy called Tom Matt that describes something that he sees on a regular basis without any substances. He calls it upsight. You can look it up. But essentially, it's literally like a computer console that opens up in front of me. It has the same tiles that open up. If you go on YouTube to Dango Thoughts and you search for the console, you'll find the full video about that. And I have a graphic there that shows how these things look, give or take. I worked with a 3D artist to kind of have like a rudimentary representation of it. And then there's menus, there's tiles that come up and they just hover in front of me, just like a Tony Stark augmented reality. And it does different things. Mostly it kind of just hovers there. And then if I do particular things with my attention, it just dislodges itself and become part of my, it comes to me. Now, something that I know I spoke about in podcasts, but I never spoke about it live. So maybe I'll just give you a little bit of an insight on it. One time I managed to make, there's a carousel of VR glasses on my left, and I managed to make that one work, and that was wild. What it does, it's a personality switcher. So not personality, but like, I think personality is the wrong word. It's almost like it made me into a different person. So like the second different goggles would come on, it would just make me someone else. And the central attention unit, it was very strange. It was still the same, it felt the same, which, by the way, kind of really makes you think if inside at the core of all of us, the I am feels the same. You know what I mean? Like, what if for you, no matter who you are, man, woman, and all the way in between, even animals, I don't know, like that central I amness, what if that feels exactly the same? And then there's like a personality that is kind of wrapped around it. I think it's actually very plausible that's the case. But anyways, the central unit feeling was the same. But then the first character I was this African American, and I literally the whole like the caricature version of it. But I could feel like I only in the sense that like my whole home became like a crib. Like I could feel what you would say, like the rhythm. Like I could feel it through my bones, and I was like, holy shit! And I was like, just everything about my demeanor, everything just changed completely. And I could even feel the cultural pain. Like I could literally feel like what it feels like to carry that weight. I don't know a better way to explain, but literally could feel the cultural pain. And then and then the second time it made me into this like crazy genius, and I could understand all these like crazy concepts. And all of these things you can say, well, okay, come on, dude. Like, how do you know that was like? It could just made you delusional that's possible, like that you actually experienced that, right? Sure. However, I think there was one more, and I forget what it was, but there was another one where it made me into this. I used this term with a good girlfriend of mine, and she said, "Why?" Okay, so I always call it like a womanizer, but she got very upset that I called it a womanizer. She's like, "Why are you saying a womanizer? It's not like a good word." I'm like, I don't know. What do you want me to call it? Like, what I mean is like somebody almost like imagine like a pickup artist, but not like an obnoxious one, like somebody who understands women like really, really well. So in the sense that you understand all of women's needs and desires and all the triggers like that makes them feel more sexual and all of that stuff, right? So I don't know what else to call it. I call it a womanizer because it's just somebody who's just chasing women all the time, but they get really good at it, right? And there's the creepy ones, but there's the ones that are actually like that women really like because they understand what they want, right? So my now fiance girlfriend at the time, she was sleeping, and I was having this moment, and I was like everything about me changed again, like my posture, everything, right? And I literally with one hand I started like, for lack of a better term, I started conducting her, like literally like, just with one hand I knew exactly how to move, and she woke up, and it was, I mean, we have fun, but that was just wild, right? And at the end she was like, what the fuck was that? I'm like, all I can tell you is that thing is real. Now, people always ask me, did some of this wisdom remain? I would like to believe so, but that was one of these like moments where it was like proof positive that this is real information. Because a lot of this stuff, you can say, well, you just got into the flow. I don't know, whatever you want to think about it, but it opened a channel of like immediate understanding of what would be the perfect sequence of what to do, when to do, how to do it, everything, which kind of gives me a little bit more to myself, like a credibility with this thing, that it's a real thing versus just kind of like a glistening, beautiful thing in front of you. Let's see. Everyone comes at it from the, okay, we saw that. Give a different personality filter, kind of. Yeah, it literally, like, they showed me that the question is if it gave me like a different personality. It's essentially like, imagine if what you are is just literally the way that your neurons fire in any given moment, right? It's like a pattern. It just changed the pattern. Like, it showed me, like, look, we can make you into someone completely different, like that. It's just a matter of like changing the switches in the brain. I am is the same. Yeah, that was wild. It definitely blew her mind. It was a glorious moment. Got a very good. We break. Yeah. Enjoying these streams. A tide is turning towards an affection for understanding. I feel that. We're reaching another. Like, I really feel that there's subsets of society now that are ready for something else, and we are capable of having the conversation in a different way, even when it's a really hard conversation. My favorite conversations are the ones where you disagree, but you feel the camaraderie in trying to get at the thing together. Arguments can never work. This is what debates never work. They're silly. They're like, and obviously they're not made to change people's minds. They're made to kind of like maybe appeal to the people that already believe this kind of stuff so you can get more views. I don't think they ever sway someone, maybe rarely. But I think the types of conversations that people have in which they come from a true place of understanding, but a firm position when it's required, that's an important part. You can't just be like Mandy forever, right? Certain things where you think people are wrong, you have to be stern on that. But still, with that sternness, it should never be directed at. It just needs to be like a firm stance where you explain why you stand there instead of demanding that the other side understands, because nobody owes anybody anything, in the sense that unless we see that somebody's interested to truly be understood and they're willing to extend the same favor to us, we rarely going to try and actually open up and also try and understand. It's like a reciprocation thing. How are the experience with the laser that you're hearing about being categorized, interrogated for details? Okay, one more, Kairos. And then, so do you think that reincarnation is an aspect of the simulation, or do you think you were tapping into someone else's experience? Well, if you want to think that there's one experiencer ultimately, then I guess it's all one thing just bouncing around. But I do think that reincarnation all of a sudden makes sense, because you have a consolidation period. You drop all the things that were already experienced by someone else. The only thing that remains in the soul is the most fundamental things that were never experienced before. And you move on to the next experience, like the next lifetime. And it keeps going like that. How are the experience with the laser? Okay, so as for the laser, the news updates is that we just keep doing the experiments, with different people. People send me emails and, about their experiments, sometimes videos and things like that. We're working on a documentary. I don't know if Aaron's still here, but he's an incredible director who's reached out to me and he wanted to do a documentary about it, and his work just blows my mind. Hopefully it's going to be ready in a few months. And I did speak to a few scientists who are actively studying this stuff, putting it in the actual study that they already have conducted or about to be conducted. It's much more complex. Like I said, they have a protocol and they have to follow the protocol. But I am certain that it's just a matter of time before we inject this into some actual experiment. Is there any bad side effects that happen during or after? Are you talking about specifically about the molecule carry, or how do you pronounce your name? Or are you talking about the experiment with the laser? There has to be a baseline of respect. Yes, I agree. I think that is something that is lacking. People say, you have to earn respect. Yeah, but I think that if you come already respectful and and you are truly respectful, and not like respectful in the way of like just waiting for the moment where they're going to disrespect you so you get to disrespect them. See, all of that is already also written on your face. So I think if you truly come in something genuinely, and you really, to your deepest core that you're really trying to reason, then it really is a form of superpower, because you're good. You're in the right, whatever it is that is being discussed. If you're constantly open for revision, you're coming at it from a respectful place, and you're not too pompous to believe that your mind cannot be changed or you can't know something new, I think you're in the most powerful position. It doesn't matter what the other person knows more than you, because then if you're truly in that position, you'll be open to being revised by somebody who's more knowledgeable or wiser than you. Any bad side effects about the laser? Is asking. Only in the sense that I noticed that people kind of like split. Some people get really excited, and other people that I'm now getting more and more sensitive to this fact. I always say that people like the idea of knowing. They don't always like actually knowing. And I'm increasingly more sensitive to that I'm kind of gauging people slowly, and I'm making sure that they understand that there's like a no return point there, where if you know, it has a certain feeling. There's something, again, the bubble burst, right? And it does not mean that your world is fake, which is something that is also important for me to emphasize. The simulation does not mean fake. It just means computationally rendered. But it does mean that everything that you believed about, your to the extent that you perceive things as free will, to the extent that you perceive, that your life matters, all of that is still the same. It's just that there's a larger environment. That's all. So any good or bad things, it depends on people's psychology, really, just like with anything else, I believe. Let's see. Yes, makes sense. I'm curious what it's like for those people after really knowing this. Surprisingly, not like the next day, not much happens. And I can also tell you for myself, it's like not much is changing in your moment to moment appropriation. You just, you go to the store, you do laundry, you work, you do everything the same. I personally am engaging with this very often. So for me, maybe something is already a little different. I'm looking at things a little differently now. But I think that if you just experience it once or twice, it's kind of, your mind very quickly just buries it, I think, in kind of like okay, not going to worry about that, because you don't know what to do with that, right? So unless we know what we can actually utilize it for, I think it's very quickly your brain kind of like protects you from that. It's just kind of like, okay, it's almost like you knowingly don't know it anymore, very conveniently. It's kind of funny how the brain is like that. So do you think that, reincarnation, we saw the comment. Thank you, YouTube, by the way. Kind of like after an intense trip. Yeah, or after any trip, honestly. DNA's code is physics or reality itself being a code huge jump conceptually. Wait, DNA is code. Is physics or reality itself being code a huge jump conceptually? Oh, I see. No, it's all information in the end. It's not even a jump. I think that's exactly spot on. So I think that the only thing that ever evolved from the beginning of time was information. And yes, we have to kind of go and define what information is, but let's, for simplicity's sake, now let's just say that the only thing that ever evolved is information. When you look at it that way, because information basically contrives the laws of physics, biology, the laws of chemistry, all the arising properties, biology, life, multicellular brains, and so on and so on, central nervous systems. And then it just keeps finding new dimensional new dimensions to interact with and move through. And through whatever level it's on, it creates a more complex system on which it gets to evolve even more. What happens from the physical to the chemistry level, which is more complex and has all kinds of interactions that didn't exist on just a physical level. Same goes for biology, same goes for life, same goes for multicellular, so it goes for central nervous system, higher and higher rising properties, right? And then eventually you reach a stage like us, and now it's building another system that is being built on top of us, that we are still at the core of it, right? Your mammalian and your reptilian mind are still part of your system. But now there's going to be another layer on top of that, and it's all information evolving. So it's not really anybody here who knows a few things about evolutionary biology. The story of evolution is not the story of organisms or animals. It's the story of gene pools. The only thing that is actually doing the thing is gene pools, and they sometimes stretch across individuals. So sometimes they exist in like clusters that cross individuals, and because they're actually eternal. And what they're doing is essentially they're just building structures for themselves to survive. It's almost like we are the Megatron of the genes, right? They create different forms for themselves to survive in a particular environment. And that's essentially what's evolving. But you can say, well, the information at the core of that, the code, is evolving. So in that sense, it's not even a stretch. I think it's exactly what's going on. In that sense, by the way, thank you for the gift, by the way, Spike Mike. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And if we can tap a little bit more, just so we can bring a little bit more people towards the end, also manifesting themselves, make a thing of Gene Keys. Make me think. Yeah, the Gene Keys is I think it's a great, interesting, very interesting book. Thank you for the likes, guys. Highly recommend it. I think there's a lot there that is true. And but before I give you like a recap of that, so if you consider the thing about the genes as the main operative, the replicators themselves, which don't have to manifest themselves in physical matter, memes are actual replicators, right? So like the original idea of the meme was essentially to show the similar function to a gene. A meme is essentially the same thing like a gene, just in the idea space. So a meme is any smallest unit of an idea that causes a mind to want to replicate it. In other words, think about it, talk about it, it replicates this way, right? And it's being copied to different brains. A good joke is a meme. A good phrase is a meme. It doesn't have to be a particular thing, as long as it causes minds to want to replicate it, which is the same as genes causing particular environments to want to replicate them, essentially. In that sense, it's like very straightforward that technology is not only not our enemy, it's literally just like a continuation of evolution. And I am in the camp that believes that thinking otherwise is literally racist. Like you imagine that just because something is like something that is not you, somehow it will automatically want to kill you or something like that, right? Or hurt you or something like that. I do think that in this particular case, it's a little different, because I do believe that we are that AGI, we are that central unit, and these are just extensions of us. But I think that the fear of these technologies is actually the thing that might bring the demise, versus the trying to engage with it with an excited state in which you're trying to learn how to actually interact with them in a better way, which I think is a healthier situation. Proteins make me think of Gene Keys. Oh, Gene Keys, yes. Hello, Tommy. So Gene Keys, thank you for the likes, guys. The Gene Keys essentially is an expansion on a previous work that was all the stuff about human design that I'm sure some of you heard here. I actually thought that it was kind of like, I was never a big believer in like astrology and none of that, and I kind of thought it was in the same camp. But then I looked at human design. It was mind-bogglingly intricate. And I have to say that like I tried to like apply certain like insights from there, and it kind of worked. So I can't say that I didn't get any value from it, even if it was just a heuristic. But in addition to that, so then one of his students, the guy who came up with the human design, he thought it was incomplete, and he channeled. I don't necessarily I'm not a big fan of that term, but he essentially wrote a book called The Gene Keys, which is a more expansive version of that. And in it, he describes that just according like to the I Ching, which is you have like the 64 hexagrams. He used them to basically say there's 64 gene keys that are implanted in all of us. They're part of like our almost like Easter eggs of our evolution. And when we evolve as humans, what happens, each gene key starts expressing itself First, different gene keys in different people, and then eventually we start completing each other's gene keys, and then they all open up, and they all have 3 levels. The first level is the shadow, then you have the gift, and then the city. I never know how to pronounce that right. So the city, and then the shadow is essentially always the entry point, which is in order to get to the gift and to the higher level of the city, you actually have to go through the shadow. There's no other way. That's the only entry point. This is why if you try to go towards like the, like, oh, we're all light without actually going through the shadow and understanding what it is, you're never going to get there. And each expression, each gene key, for example, I don't know, I don't remember them exactly, but let's say one of them is like narcissism, the shadow, right? Then when you go through that process of being a narcissist, you start discovering the gift, which is that, the appreciation of certain things. And then you start appreciating that. I'm just making this up right now because I don't remember if that's an actual thing. I'm giving you an example. Then you start basically appreciating that not just in you, but in others. And then you see that beauty in the world, and that's the gift, right? And then the city would be something like the ultimate version of that. You see the beauty of God or understand the beauty of creation, and so that's how it goes. So I think there's a lot of deep wisdom in this book. I highly recommend it. It's a long one. I've been going through the shadow with my negative entity. LOL. Would you consider blah blah that the negative entity is essentially a part of you that you're not accepting? Real question. It's not a loaded question. I actually mean that as a question. After my first experience seeing code, I sat with it for a while, felt like I needed to reconcile why the method made this presentation possible. So you saw the code. You mean the code in the laser, or you saw the code in your own way? Kairos DCC. How are you, Mandy loves cake. Sigh. That has been one of my considered possibilities. Thank you for sharing. I mean, as far as reconciliation of the realization that things are not maybe as you thought. Oh, well, yeah. But I think that's a good realization to have regardless on all fronts, right? The things are usually not what you think they are. I think that's a very humbling experience when you have it, and then having it often helps you realize that actually it's almost always the case, and most of our convictions are incorrect. And I think that's really what the wisdom of the age. Like, you become a real adult when you realize that too much conviction is not a good thing. I see we're getting. Let's try and get to, guys. We'll do a final kind of like push, and we will touch on one more subject. Let's try and get to 6,000 if you guys don't mind tapping to get some likes, so we get more people in the room, and then we'll go to like a nice conclusion. That's a cool pic of Justin Bieber on your shirt. I know Justin Bieber looks Asian in this one. 54 here. So yeah. Thank you, Red McBride. Yeah. It's something. What age would you say, Red McBride, you started understanding this really well? Was it a long time ago? It's very racially ambiguous. Justin Bieber, I think it's just all ambiguous. Like sometimes, it's very. What's the word? What's the word when you don't know if somebody's a man or a woman? I keep forgetting it. Tacos, feel the zeal, be the zeal. I love that. So yeah, thank you for the likes, guys. Yeah. So yeah, man, listen, what can I say? This is a crazy day. I do think, you know what? I do think that, like, just it's so clear to me that whomever wanted this to happen, either was the whole thing with Trump, if it was, staged, not staged, I don't know. One thing is so clear to me that picture that everybody now reposting, that will go down as the best picture in human history of like him going like this, dude, he just won. It just won. This is just what happened. Like it's so clear. And yeah, man, my personal journey with Trump is just crazy. I mean, if you don't believe in a simulation, I think when he was elected and then finding out that the world didn't fall apart after he was president, like both of these things were just like As a long life Democrat, I was just like blown away. Like this was one of these moments for me, and like just telling you my conviction, right? Which is that these were two moments where I was like, okay, I do not understand the world as much as I thought I do. Like if I have to be honest, this is like I never thought in a million years that someone like them could be elected in the beginning, and when he was, I was like, what? And then when he did, and yeah, I have a lot of criticism of Trump, but in the end of the period, like America was in place. Like I know that a lot of Democrats don't want to admit this, but like it was fine. Like it wasn't like and people say, well, he did a lot of damage to our image in the world. Sure. Again, I'm not a political animal. I'm just telling you about my experience of feeling like I do not understand the world as much as I thought I did. And even people that I respect their opinion, like Sam Harris, when they like talk about Trump like endlessly, like he's like basically the reincarnation of the Antichrist. I'm like, I don't know if I don't like again. I would not like that him being as the exemplar of what we are as America, but this is one of these moments where I was like, okay, I do not understand this world as straightforwardly as I thought I do, because both of these things just fly in the face of each other. And I think it's a healthy place to be when you realize that you don't get it as much as you think you do. Um, talk about the meme, that picture of Trump. Yeah, man, this will go like either you like him or you hate him. That picture it will go down in history 100%. Same little, that's what makes me step back now, because I don't have all the info clearly. Yeah, I mean, I'm just like at this point I don't understand anything. And also it actually showed me that like truly like immediate appearance. Well, I guess I kind of knew that part, right? Like it was clear to me that you should not judge a book by its cover, but I guess I didn't understand to what extent. Again, it's not like I came out of it like a Trump supporter. And again, to anybody who's just joining, this is not a political conversation. I'm literally talking about me and me only. I'm not trying to sway anybody in any direction whatsoever. Just giving you my experience. First of all, I don't care about politics all that much at all in general, because I do think that it's actually almost like doesn't matter. Like it does feel to me that way. I know that I'm probably wrong about that too, but it just feels, my intuition is like it doesn't matter. And it's not I do and go and vote at this point, but I just it feels like it's kind of pointless. The one person I will share this, and again, not trying to sway anybody in any direction whatsoever. I was that was the first time that I saw like true hope, is when I saw Vivek. Like I will say that I do catch him in these moments where I'm like, I see the player there, but from all the candidates, I was like, dude, if he would keep running, I was almost like, dude, am I gonna vote Republican? This was like a crazy thought for me, right? Just because he makes sense, like he truly is like there, engaged, understands, listens. Is that too much to ask in a president? This is so crazy, Um, and this is why at this point I'm like, dude, I'm not saying anything about anything in that space, because clearly I'm a moron when it comes to this, because I do not understand how can these things, sway that way or another way. And so I'm trying to stick with things that I think are like would survive the ebb and flow, the winds of time a little bit more. And I also think they have a deeper value, which is like just the shared humanity and what we are. Like, are we going to go explore the stars? These things excite me. What are we going to all do together about like all the ills of the world? How are we going to fix it? How are we going to come together? And like that excites me. And I think it's so much more romantic and beautiful than politics and all that stuff. And yes, things needs to be done. The older I get, the more appreciation of that I have, by the way. That sometimes you have to be a little bit more conservative, because you have to understand that even though you have these beautiful dreams, the truth on the ground matters too. Like you actually have to think about what the situation now is and then how you move from there, right? But all of that just made me realize, dude, holy crap. Things happen in this life and you just like, you don't even know how it can unfold in a way that you could never, ever imagine. I think if you would take somebody from 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and you tell them, like, show them what is the situation now, I mean, just that alone tells you that we will live in a simulation, right? Dude, he said that Ted Cruz's dad was involved in the JFK assassination in the primaries. LOL. Who did? Trump. Dude, Trump is like again. Trump is insane, right? But I have to admit that one thing I have to admit as a Democrat, I have to admit, in the end of the 4 years, things were in place. Like it wasn't better or worse for me than any other president, right? The Simpsons tries to warn us. I don't know how the Simpsons do this. It's crazy. Let's see what else we got here. I enjoyed the discussion a lot more than the news. Thanks, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming, Red McBride. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for all the love. If you guys have a few more questions, let's do it. Let's do another maybe 5-10 minutes. Now I have to bounce because it's getting pretty late. This was yeah, I didn't know what to expect today, just because God bless Trump. You know what's hilarious? I'll tell you a little anecdote. It was really funny to me. There was an interview with Sam Harris, probably some of you saw, with Tom Bilyeu, in which he was interviewing Sam about Trump. And anybody who listens to Sam, you probably know how much he like hates Trump, right? So it was Sam was like so like engaged and, as always, so articulate about like why he can't stand Trump and all of that. And literally, there was a commercial break. It was YouTube. There was a commercial break, and you see Sam's face talking like all this shit about Trump, and all of a sudden it breaks into Trump, and he was like, "If you could spare just a few pennies," it's just Trump talking. It was like literally like a scene from a movie. It was amazing. Yeah, so yeah, if you guys have a few more questions, I would love to answer them. Oh, what I was saying, I didn't know what to expect today from the chat, because I thought that maybe there's going to be some kind of like a crazy polarization. And I don't know if it's just the, just this chat and the types of people that my chat attracts, that is more like balanced, which is a huge compliment to me, of course, if that's the case. But also, I don't know, something tells me that it really is like a wonderful moment for us to learn how to engage better. And I do think we're going to get out from this, from the other side, in a better way. And I don't mean just in America. I think the world. We are going to a better place, but it's going to get a little uncomfortable, I'm sure. But I think ultimately the voice of reason and voice of compassion, more than anything, will win. Because otherwise it's impossible. We can't go to the stars having such basic disagreements about some basic fundamental things, Like I think that even if you're a hardcore Republican, if you don't believe that it's possible, if you don't believe that if it is possible to find a system in which the people who are capable and willing, going to work and making really good money, and you create a system that actually still pays for at least universal healthcare, right? It's just the fact that people who, in the moment, whatever life choices they made, no matter how much they messed up, doesn't matter right now. If they need a serious surgery to live, if you don't believe that that should be an option for them to just get the surgery so they get to live, even if they don't have the money, you are insane. You're insane. And I'm willing to say this, right? But if you're a Democrat and you believe that there's, you just always have to constantly be like open, not realizing that, hey, sometimes boundaries is okay. Like, you're also insane. I don't think these are controversial points. My point is that there are universal truths, right? That the contention can be, well, we can't achieve this kind of system at the moment because of A, B, and C. Okay, logical argument. But if the argument is, I don't want that system ever, you're insane. Like, why would you not want some kind of a safety net for people who can't afford it, and for whatever reason, right? And again, this goes to both sides. Sometimes I hear claims that are just like so on the face of it, they're just like bunkers, that they cannot be part of the human tapestry if we are going to go together into space and become like a unified civilization. We can have our differences, but things like this should not be differences. Like being, you know, rational and looking at what the facts really are, and not acting out of just like whatever feels right in the moment without looking at the importance of like what, you know, what the larger data is telling us. It's my audience for sure. Well, then I take it as a huge compliment. Thank you, everybody. Actually, you know, this is something that I will like, probably not today, but like I do want to touch on the subject, The Simpsons, because truly, does somebody know how they do this? Was it ever like explained how they do this shit? Like, was there ever like a thing where, I don't know, maybe it was like fake, or did somebody ever did the Mythbusters ever do an episode on Simpsons? Is what I'm asking. How did they know? I'm sure you guys are aware of the meme, right? How do they know all these like events way before it happens? Each party extreme displays a toxic expression of masculinity, femininity. See, but even that if I can challenge you for a second, Patricia, but like in a really beautiful way, not like in your face kind of way. So even to me, like what you just said, so like what you said in the beginning, I agree with, which is like each party can exhibit display extreme toxic expressions. But I think that even when we say masculinity and femininity, I feel like these are already kind of putting us in camps, right? So like I would just say, look, there's extreme views, right? And these extreme views always have an extreme energy, and it has like a thrust. And for example, if you're against things, if your main thrust is you're against something, eventually when that something is remedied, the thing went away that you were against, but the feeling of being against is still there. So you want to keep appropriating it, right? And then you find reasons to be pissed off about. I feel like that's a lot of what happened in too many movements. Like, notice that the movements for gay rights back in the day were for gay rights. It's for something, to build something. So when that thing is achieved, okay. But if you're against something, and there's a lot of movements like that, then even if that thing is being remedied to a degree or to an ultimate degree, you will always want to keep perpetuating this anti, like, no, I don't want something. And I feel like that's always a toxic way of actually looking at things. Yeah, I know you're simplifying. Yeah, I didn't mean it like in a, well, you get me. All right, guys. Well, I think we ran our course for today. I really appreciate everybody. It's wonderful to have this kind of crowd. And I get you too. And much love to everybody, and peace. And we will see you tomorrow. Peace. All right, YouTube chat. Thank you so much for being here as well. We'll grow this one, I promise. Thank you, everybody, for participating.